earliest memory about money is probably I think I was probably about 6 or 7, and
Okay.
I don't know. My mom gave me whatever. I think it was equivalent about $20 Canadian.
Okay. That's
It
a
was
lot for
pretty big
6 or 7.
money,
Yeah.
yeah. And then we're told like, oh, go to the nearby 7-Eleven to pick up. I think it was milk or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I got money. I put it in my pocket. I was walking with my younger brother, and then got to the store, pick up the whatever milk or whatever we needed, and I was like, oh, where's the money?
Oh
I
no.
lost it, right? So that's still it's in my memory.
You
It's
still
kind
have
of
that in your memory.
I
It
know
was a
it's
big deal.
pretty yeah, 'cause it was a lot of money back then,
Yeah.
right? So it was like so I don't know if that has made a negative imprint in my mind or positive. I don't know, but
Well,
I'm
where do you
still
put like if you have cash? Where do you put it
I
in
still
somewhere
put it in
safe?
my pocket, but now but I was pretty careful then. I was like keep
You kept
like
checking.
checking, and still somehow I must have just like
Just
dropped
like
it
you
off.
made to something came
Yeah, I
out,
don't
or
know.
just
I
like
don't know. Never.
pulled out.
So
You were only 6 or 7.
yeah, so that was probably my earliest memory in terms of
What was
money.
the consequence? Like, did you go home and you were just so upset?
Yeah, I
and
was
you
pretty
said-
upset about with myself, and
Yeah.
my mom was out. Not a big deal. It's money, right? It
happens.
happens, but just be careful next time. And
Yeah.
it was more upset about myself because
Yeah, you were more upset than she was.
yeah, I've been pretty like I'm a pretty responsible person, like
Yeah.
even as a kid, right?
You
so
were
I
a
was
good
like,
kid.
I lost like $20. That's pretty.
So
big
they
deal.
knew that you didn't like you weren't lying and you
Yeah,
didn't
they
steal
knew, I
it.
mean-
You didn't like give it to somebody or go gamble
No,
or anything with it.
growing up, we were like we didn't have an allowance. My parents would just keep money in a drawer somewhere, and
Okay.
if we need money, we would just go and then take it. And
You
then,
could just go get money for
yeah, and then
whatever you
just
wanted.
tell them like
I took some
we
money.
took some money. So
Wow.
so there's always that level of trust. So yeah, that wasn't for them. That wasn't like that was a way to teach us. But I think I was more upset about myself,
Yeah.
like losing that money and not being responsible, kind of thing, right?
So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Taiwan. I was born there, and then we moved to Canada when I was 13.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you lived a fair amount of your early life.
Yeah, but I
In
basically
Taiwan.
yeah, but I would say Canada's home, right? I grew
Yeah.
up there. I've been there
You've been there for-
over 20 something years. now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So why did your parents come over to Canada?
Yeah, so we were traveling. Like my dad was coming to U.S. For his business,
Okay.
like meeting customers and all that, and they liked the environment in the U.S. So they were looking to hey, why don't
they
we
got a
immigrate to
taste of it.
U.S.
Okay.
But then when they started looking into it, it was like way harder to get into U.S. And then we went to 1 year we visited Canada in Vancouver, and before that we were visiting L.A. And back then L.A. was like pretty in terms of crimes that I drive through downtown
Okay.
L.A. is like lock the door. It
Yeah.
was
Okay.
pretty
So
sketchy.
not the best place.
And then we went to Canada. I think that was in the 90s, and we're like seeing people walking on the street at night downtown. Or we're like, well, this is different.
What's happening? Everyone's
And-
saying hello to me.
Yeah, and then like we went to Squamish. Was like, whoa, this is great. So we're like, oh, it's easier to get to Canada. So they really,
All right.
it wasn't any reason for them. It was just like, well, it's a better environment, and so we did the immigration thing and got in and
What kind of-
immigrated to Canada.
What kind of business was your family in?
My dad was import export, like wood products and stuff.
So
but
that
then
could translate. He could bring that over to Canada, no problem.
Yeah,
Or?
sort of. He's tried to do that a little bit, and then after a couple years in Canada, he decided to sort of just retire. So he retired in his like mid 40s.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that speaks to he was already financially independent at some point. Then?
Yeah, for more or less. Yeah.
Like before you guys moved to Canada from Taiwan. Or
not quite. I
close
think
enough?
pretty close, and we just been pretty frugal, and
Okay.
so that kind of helped
So
too.
he made some good money with his business in Taiwan, and that coupled with frugality made it so that like he had enough money to move everybody over, and then just needed to make a little bit more money in Canada.
Yeah, I think he like I think frugality is always in the family blood. So
Yeah,
even when he's always like even he wasn't making, I don't think he was making big bucks, but still just like
But
saving
still enough to
yeah,
feel
enough to-
financially independent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting just growing up in a family that my dad's retired, so
Yeah,
it was
so
interesting.
early.
And then like
Yeah.
a cousin of mine retired in his 40s, and another cousin was financial independent in her 40s as well, but she continued to work. So that
So
kind
you
of
had a lot of
runs in the
inspiration.
exactly,
Yeah.
and money's being like openly discussed within the family. So that I think that makes it very interesting.
Yeah. Well, so
Yeah.
you kind of know, like, you know how they did it,
Yeah.
and it's no big secret.
No,
Is
and
it?
then and no, it's not a big secret. And then that cousin of mine that retired in his 40s, I definitely look up to him. He's kind of like my mentor a little
Okay.
bit.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how he got me into computers.
Okay.
So I definitely like, hey, like, how did you do it, and what do you still do? What do you invest in? And I definitely pick on his brain quite a bit whenever I have
Yeah.
the chance. So it's been really cool.
That's really nice to have,
Yeah.
and someone who's so close to you, and you know that what they did, you can achieve that, especially if you follow a similar path.
Yeah.
And then having parents who obviously support this.
Yeah, for sure.
too.
And I mean, I know growing up, like both my parents would always be like, make sure you save, then you could retire. You don't have to work for too long. You could retire at. They didn't specify an age,
Yeah.
but just like you could retire early. But like once I started writing the blog, it was never about retire early. It was more, when can we become financially independent, and just so we could do things we love to do.
Have more options.
Yeah, and not
Yeah.
tied to the idea of having to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. It's like work because we choose to, not because we have to.
That's right. That I like that idea of FIRE, instead of like, I'm going to retire and sit down somewhere and do nothing for the next 50 years, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it's early, right? You have
Yeah.
so much more of a runway, and most people seem to be doing some kind of work for income, right?
Exactly.
When they reach financial independence, because it's just that comfort level that gives the options, the freedom, right?
Yeah, I think the important message is that once you're FI, you could do things you really really enjoyed,
Yes.
regardless of the money. So you could volunteer as like homeless shelter if you want,
Yeah.
and if you get paid, that's an extra thing.
You don't
right?
have to make your decisions based on, is this worth my time in terms of money?
Exactly.
You can keep doing your job and you can keep making lots of money if that's what you want to do, but you have an option to cut your hours down.
Exactly.
Or
Yeah.
other
That I think that's the important thing, and also, even it's not about financial independence. It's more, I think, at the core, it's about making a better financial future for yourself and your family, right? So
yeah.
so I think everybody wants to do that, regardless where you're at, whether you're 20,000 in debt or you're just starting out. Like, everybody is trying to have a better financial future.
I think so. Okay, so let's go back and find out how you got to. Well, would you say you're almost there? Or you could if you wanted
Well,
to
we
be?
could if we want to be today. Yeah, like with our like if we decide to like, we live in Vancouver, so obviously expensive within Canada. But if we move to a smaller town within Canada,
okay.
or move to like Southeast Asia. Like, I'm originally from Taiwan, so we thought about
Yeah, it's
moving.
definitely an option for you.
That's definitely something. But we're kind of taking the slow route to FI. Like,
yeah.
we kind of just thought, hey, if we have enough dividend income to cover our expenses, we could call ourselves financial independent.
Yeah.
But we're
If you change your life.
yeah. But like, number wise, I think we're there. It might have to play around
So
with it. So yeah.
if you really needed to stop working, you could, and you would just have to change,
Change-
sort of, I guess, the top expenses in your life.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
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 Which is what a lot of people do anyway.
Exactly.
Either they move and they downsize, and then they cut down transportation, I guess, is the second one, and I think food was the third one on the list from the movie last night, the screening.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So okay, so you are pretty much there now if you wanted to, but now you have options, right, to keep going, right?
Exactly.
So okay, so let's go back then to you. $20 is lost,
Uh-huh.
and then what would be like the next time maybe that you were entrusted with money, maybe you made money yourself? Like, how did you start making money as a young person, and what did that mean to you?
Well, being like Taiwanese and stuff, I guess we get red envelope.
Oh, you got the
in,
red pockets? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
In Chinese New Year. So that's usually where I get my money each year, and usually it's just say put it in the bank kind of thing. Yeah, I think I had a bank account. Yeah, when I forgot, like really young,
Yeah.
and
Well,
back then interest rate was way higher, so I would make the like I would be like checking my my
your
deposit
bank.
book.
Yeah, you'd be
And
looking
just
at that
like,
book.
you know, going to the bank and get the what the amount is, and it's like, oh, I got
It's
just
more.
so
It
much more. Yeah,
grew.
so that
Okay,
was
so that's
interesting.
inspiring.
Yeah,
So
that's
that helped
inspiring.
you. So that made you want to save more.
Exactly.
Was there stuff that you wanted to spend money on when you were younger, like in high
Um,
school or earlier?
I think I like a lot of my friends had like Nintendo and all that stuff, but we
Yeah.
never had one.
Oh,
So
you
that
didn't, eh?
that was just secretly wishing for one, but we never got one until much later. Computer, but yeah, I wasn't like, again, we didn't have an allowance, and my parents are usually pretty good with like in terms of if we want something, eventually we get it. It
Yeah.
might take a few years. So yeah, never really had any giant wishes in terms of what I want to buy specifically.
That
Yeah.
definitely helped. Like I can see that definitely helping with achieving financial independence in the future.
Yeah, and
if
it's
you don't
kind of
have those needs for material
Yeah.
things, right?
it's kind of funny because like my wife always jokes about like, you know, I it's like, what's your birthday wish?
Yeah.
I should probably start in January because you always give me like two. So yeah, like literally like it's my birthday coming up, and she asked me a while ago, and I gave her two things, and they're all small things. She's like, give me more options so I could get you something cool, right?
So you don't really need much. Like what? I mean, again, jumping ahead or jumping to now. Like, what are your what do you like to do with money other than save it? Obviously.
We like to travel.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
Experiences.
I think we focus on that more nowadays.
Yeah.
Experiences, food. We
yeah.
like we just recently went to New York for 8 days,
Oh, nice.
and the whole family, and we definitely tried a few like not expensive restaurants, but I mean it's expensive in New York. Like
Yeah,
a
well, just-
$2 sign
yeah.
thing in Vancouver is maybe like $20 per person. In New York, a $2 sign was like 25 US per person.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
right. But we went to like a few, you know, we like these cooking shows. So we went to some of these celebrity chefs
Oh, you did.
restaurants, like
Oh, yeah.
lower,
Their
the lower
restaurants.
end ones.
Very cool.
But it was still like amazing food. So we definitely be
Yeah.
willing to spend money on, you know, experiences, like
Yeah.
something that's memorable.
So yeah, so non-material things and experiences, and that's what you'll be able to get in the future, you know.
Exactly.
And then you can set your level of financial independence based on how much of that you want to do, right? And you know, so the earlier that you hit like that basic level, right, the more options you have to be like, okay, well, let's work a few more years to be able to like take one more trip or two more trips. So I don't know how
Yeah.
detailed you do it, but we can get to that in a sec.
Yeah.
So so you're not really, so you're just saving all this money. Did you like, not necessarily your parent, this is a different situation, right? Because your parents are financially independent, but does that mean that they have like saved up money for you to go to school or anything like that? Like how did they set up their finances for that?
Yeah, I was definitely very fortunate. They paid for my post-secondary.
That's amazing.
So
That's
I
so
came
good.
out without any debt. And
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. So I definitely appreciate that. I want to do that for my kids.
Yeah, okay.
But having said that, I think I don't want to, you know, maybe a little bit selfish. I don't want to like screw up my retirement because I'm saving for the kids.
Well, that's what everyone's
post-secondary.
doing, right? Like
So like I realize you need to find a bit of balance. Right?
Yeah,
and
there's
and
nothing
that,
wrong
that's,
with them taking
that's
a
the whole
loan.
thing about my blog. I'm like, the key message I drive is you need to find your personal balance between saving for the future and
Yeah.
spending for today, enjoying life today. Because quite honestly, like tomorrow is never guaranteed, right? Even though you think you'll wake up tomorrow,
that's
but
true.
you never know, right?
You
and
might be sick,
having
right?
having encountered a few deaths the last year and a bit,
Oh, really?
not just like friends and family,
Yeah,
and even coworkers, I was like, well, this is, you know, we really need to make sure we get that experience while we can.
Yeah.
And with young kids, it's like, well, they're gonna grow up pretty soon, and you know that you can't go rewind and you know,
Yeah.
that. So you definitely need to enjoy life when you can.
Yeah, because if you're like just traveling all the time for work, or if you're just working 24/7, and you never
Mhm.
see your kids, in order to try to make a better life for your kids, it's really one of those hard choices,
Yeah,
right?
and then like kind of like when you travel with young kids is obviously different than when you travel 10 years later when they're teenagers.
Yeah.
Going to be different focuses, different experiences, right? So you definitely want to take the opportunities and do that now.
Yeah.
Right.
So okay. So school was paid for, and where'd you go and what did you take?
I went to University of British Columbia in Vancouver, and I took engineering physics. That was one of the hardest programs
That's
in
really hard.
in engineering. And then I
why-
specialized
yeah.
in electrical and had a minor in commerce.
So what was the goal of being in like you enjoyed engineering and physics?
I like the problem solving part.
Okay. Yeah.
For those that don't know, engineering physics, basically we took a lot of physics courses. I think I was like 2 or 3 courses short of a math degree.
Okay. Yeah.
We did Fourier transform, basically every possible way you can think of.
Okay.
It was insane. And then it obviously some electrical courses, but I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, and that
Okay.
was like the only thing that delayed my decision a little bit later, because I didn't have to decide my specialization until like 3rd year.
Okay. So you just wanted to
Yeah.
figure it out, and that's what school's for.
Yeah,
right?
and then it was ultimately it was good because it helped me with problem solving skills and making connections with friends, and heck, I don't even do engineering anymore. Right? So
No.
it's kind of funny.
So did you start in engineering after
I
school?
started in engineering after school, and then kind of I'm in marketing now.
Okay.
So it's
That's interesting.
kind of a 180.
But in a similar like
Yeah,
well,
same
your
same company,
trajectory?
but I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I did minor in commerce, so I always knew I was interested in business.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to get into the business side of engineering, so
Okay.
kind of like a natural progression.
Yeah, so you have the best, like you have the knowledge to be able to drive the business.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's important, right? A lot of people sort of, it's not really a pivot, it's kind of a pivot, but it's within the
Right.
industry that which
Yeah.
is good. And so I imagine you make good money coming out of school, like in your first job. Were you making it already?
It was good. I think one of the mistakes I made was I didn't negotiate my salary as
Okay,
much.
really?
Like, so I just accepted whatever they offered. It was my numbers. I was like, okay, that's good enough. So
Can you talk about that for a bit? Like why
Sure.
why do you think you didn't negotiate?
Well, I don't think I read as much in terms of what you should do in terms of getting a job. I had a number in mind. They asked. I didn't give them a range. I just say, this number and up. So they gave me the number, and I was
that's
like,
it.
I was like, oh, that's good enough. I'll accept it. And that was kind of like in the range of what my friends were getting. So I was
Okay.
like, oh, that's good enough. I don't need to.
But
I
ho-
didn't. Yeah.
But how did you know that it wasn't, that you should have got more? Like how did you figure that out? Like by talking to people afterwards, or?
Or just reading the internet after a while. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, you should, like, number one tip is always negotiate your salary offer.
So you
kind
think
of
if you
thing.
would have just done some kind of negotiation, like anything, like, oh, how about this or this, even if you didn't need it, right? Like even if
Yeah.
it wasn't, even if you were good with that low ball number,
Mm-hmm.
you think that you could have got a bit more without really ruffling
Yeah, I think
any
so. And
feathers?
plus,
or-
usually with companies, it's like salary adjustment is like, certain percentage. So if
Yeah.
you start a little bit higher, that gets compounded.
That's
more,
right. So you
but
get,
having said that, I've been with the company for 13 years.
yeah, okay.
It's a long
So
time.
the compounding
yeah.
is,
but I have had asked for a raise. Like,
yeah.
I switched position by 4 years into work, when became a project manager, and
Okay.
was one of the top ones within the company. And I was like, I'm getting paid way too low.
Yeah.
Give me a raise or I'm out of here. And
Okay.
the manager gave me a pretty significant raise, and
Well,
you
that's
know,
good. So you
so-
gave them an ultimatum. Now,
Yeah.
what did you feel like you were taking a risk there?
I think I was, for sure,
Yeah.
looking back, but I was pretty sure they would give me something, right? Because
Okay.
I was managing one of the top 3 customers in the company, right?
Yeah.
So
So we shouldn't be
it was-
afraid to use our leverage if we have any.
exactly, and
right?
and I think with Glassdoor and all these websites
Yeah.
available. You kind of see where you're at in terms of the salary range, and determine whether you should get paid more or not. And it's interesting because you look at professional athletes, right? All their salaries are open. It wasn't like that years ago,
Okay.
and now it's open. They seem to get paid more and more because if they could compare to their peers, right?
Yeah, that's
whereas,
interesting.
Whereas within Canada and US, it's like it's such a taboo subject. And interestingly enough, I have a really good buddy that he's now in Australia, and his wife is from there. So he and his wife, before that was fiance, they were living in Australia for like a year and a half. And when he came back, he was, we were kind of open about money and stuff. So he was saying that in Australia they actually talk about salary. So he
Really?
like first day, he said first day at work, he was a manager. He had like his employee asking like, how much do you make? And he was like,
Really?
whoa,
The employee?
like,
That's interesting.
What the heck, right? So he was like, but at the same time, he's like, well, that makes it easier to negotiate salary.
Absolutely.
Right. So I was like, oh, why don't we do that in Canada?
We're
so
there's
weird.
so much stigma.
Yeah.
People with comparison and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, it's good that you went and did that, and of course maybe you realized that was a little late. It's good to talk about the negotiation because people think that they just should be lucky to have a job sometimes, right?
Exactly.
And maybe that's how you felt.
I think
at the
if
time.
you provide value and you could show that you're definitely you have the talent and you could leverage that, that's very important.
Yeah. And so you're making some decent money from the beginning because you don't have any debt as well, right?
Right.
Not that it's cheap to live in British Columbia, or you were in Vancouver then after that.
Yeah.
And so how much are you able to save from the beginning?
So funny you talk about that. So another thing that I think I've written this on my blog a few times. So when I got my job, I was very much, when you're in your early 20s, you're like, I'm moving, like I moved out of home, even though my parents are in Vancouver, like Vancouver suburbs. But I was living on campus. I was living on my own. I was like, this is great. So when I got my first job, I was like, oh, I'm finding an apartment living. And then my parents were like, well, why, your work is like 20 minutes from home.
Yeah.
And, why don't you move back home and you could really save money? I was like, this is a terrible idea. I don't want to do that. And then they kept talking to me and convinced me. So I moved back home for like a year and a half.
Okay.
And that really helped with my savings rate. I was saving, they didn't charge me rent. So I was able to, save like 80, 90%.
Yeah.
Something that really helped kickstart my journey.
Absolutely. There's a lot of privilege here, right? We should acknowledge that.
Definitely. And I definitely been fortunate, but at the same time, I think within the fire community, I think this privilege card definitely gets thrown around a lot. But at the same time, if you come from a privileged background and you don't take advantage of it,
that's right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? So
that's really sort of what we should be comparing this to, right? Because not a lot of people could, a lot of people start with like 70,000 in student debt when they come out of school.
Yeah.
And they can move back in with their parents. Yeah. So if you have that option of moving back in your parents, and you don't take it, your parents were really cool to they come from, you're financially independent, from frugality. They're they were encouraging you to come back home.
Yeah,
a lot of parents don't want.
They're kind of doing the even my dad, they definitely want us to make our own decisions, and both my parents, then they kind of gently guide us along, and they wouldn't say heck, I invested in mutual funds and all that stuff, even though my dad knew it wasn't a good idea, right? But he kind of you need to learn on your own.
You're not gonna lose money, but you're not gonna. It's not the most efficient.
Yeah, high
product.
fees and stuff.
Exactly.
Right? So, yeah.
But he knew it wasn't a disaster. But you gotta learn.
Yeah, you gotta learn on your own kind of thing.
Okay,
right?
interesting.
And I think that's important because, when I was teenagers and early 20s, you definitely don't take parental advice as seriously. So I think that has helped a little bit.
Yeah. So they're they try to give you a lot of opportunities to have a head start, which was so nice, right? The paying for school and having no debt, and So yeah, so you're able to really just start like investing money right away, or
I
just
wouldn't call it
saving it.
saving it. Now that was step one. So I was
Yeah,
saving
okay.
money, but
Saving. Yeah.
I signed up for the Works RSP,
Okay,
and
good.
so I
Good
was
matching.
investing stuff in mutual funds,
Yep.
but mostly I was parking my money in GICs.
Okay.
So I wasn't earning a huge.
So
Although
it's,
back in
it's safe, but
in
it
early
was better.
2000, it was 3 or 4%.
Which I mean, that would be great. Right
Yeah,
now.
but I wasn't investing in stocks or anything like that. But it wasn't until probably 2010, like when I met my wife, and then we started dating, and and then started learning more about investing. That's when we had our 180 and started investing heavily into stocks and things like that.
So before that, then up to 2010, you're parking your money, but you're able to. You ended up moving out on your own though after a year
I
and a half?
did a year and a half because I was doing a lot of outdoor stuff like going to Squamish and Whistler and
Yeah. Okay.
and all that. So a lot of waking up super early at like 4 a.m. Because I was in the varsity outdoor club.
Okay. Yeah.
So it would be like waking up at 4 a.m., drive to Vancouver, pick up friends, and then go skiing or go hiking.
Nice. Nice.
So and eventually just like, because I was doing it basically every weekend, it was getting too hard for me to wake up that early. Because I have to wake up, what was it, like an hour or two earlier than if I was living in Vancouver.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, to get out of there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just hey, I need to move out, and I found a roommate with a friend of mine. So we
Okay.
did
So
that.
you did roommate right away. You didn't.
Yeah.
Even though you could probably have afforded a place of your own, right?
Yeah, I never thought about living on my own. I always wanted to live with a roommate, and not just another friend of mine was looking for a roommate. So we just like, hey, let's room together.
That's
yeah.
like a personality thing. Like you want to have
Yeah.
somebody to live with. Just
Yeah.
like now you're rooming with somebody here at the conference.
Yeah, exactly. Save some
Even
money.
though you could absolutely afford a place of your own.
Yeah,
right?
save some money, and then you have a conference buddy kind
Yeah,
of
you
thing.
see it. So like, I mean, we think about there's so many things you can do that save money, but also have added benefits that we don't think
Yeah.
about, right? And just because you can afford it doesn't mean that you should buy it, right?
Exactly.
And that seems to be a theme.
Yeah, I guess so if you put it that way.
In your
Yeah.
life. Well, for things that you are not passionate about, I think we've been talking a lot, like with watching the movie, the Fire movie last night.
Yeah.
And I think even Ramit's presentation in the
Mhm.
keynote, it's like there's a lot of talk about sort of doubling down on the things that you like
Yeah.
and just cutting back. What did J.D. Roth say? Like
Cutting the things that you don't value as much ruthlessly.
ruthlessly. That's
Yeah,
it. That's
the
it. Like
word, yeah.
really just like rip them apart, right?
Yeah,
Like
and that makes sense. I think that's the core thing now, because I think the general public's idea of fire is retire early, go as extreme as possible, cut
Yeah.
every expense. But I love the fact that people are now talking about I think Polak was talking about it's like a pendulum. You don't want to swing to the extremes. You kind of want to kind of like what I've been talking about, finding that personal balance. So for us is I think we have determined that, and I think I was definitely a little bit on the extreme side, and my wife was pushing back, and definitely got into some arguments.
Really?
And so that made me realize, hey, we need to find a balance to make sure we still could stay together, kind of thing, right?
Okay, so let's jump to 2010 or so then, when you met and you started talking about this concept, and how did it come up? Like, 'cause right now you're building up your savings,
Yeah.
but you're spending on things like the outdoor activities, which I'm sure were not super cheap or anything, right? Or was it to just go?
I guess for the most part, cheap is like skis and
you have
climbing
your equipment.
gears. Yeah.
Okay, so
the
it's not-
initial
yeah.
investment was a bit high.
Yeah, but
after that,
it
it's cheap,
would
yeah.
last so long, so you were able to amortize that
Yeah.
cost over years.
Yeah.
And so you're doing pretty all right.
Yeah.
But you meet, and then how does the conversation come up? Like, hey, maybe we should just
Yeah.
crack down
So
on
so
this.
my wife, she grew up on a farm in Denmark. So
Okay.
she's always been, I guess, frugal.
Well,
home.
farmers
Yeah,
are
and
classically
she's
frugal,
always
yes.
taught like you only spend how much you have.
Yes, well, that's
Right, like don't overspend.
everyone should know that.
Yeah, so both of us kind of got on the same page right away, and she went to a course and was given a book called The Millionaire Mind,
Okay.
and that's we read the book separately, but we read the book, and then that's when we started really talking about money and what we want to do in the future, and
Okay.
that got me started because I was reading personal finance books before, but not as passionately. So that
Yeah.
really started the passion. I started reading all these, Wealthy Barber and
Yeah.
all those classics. And I started taking investing courses and reading investment books, and that's when really pick up the interest, and I call it our epiphany in 2011.
Okay.
And that's when we really started doing shifting money into stocks, dividend stocks, index funds, and really thinking about, hey, what do we want to do in 10, 15 years, and
Yeah.
what's our goal? And
Started thinking about your
Yeah,
goals
and then
together.
before that, I was reading a lot of personal finance blogs, and I was like, hey, I could start one, but I was never like, do I even have stuff to write about, or do I even have enough material to write about?
Yeah.
Right? So I think I debated back and forth for like 6 or 7 months whether I want to start one, and my wife's like, well, why don't you just write some articles, see if you could even have stuff to write about, right? So I
Yeah.
did that, and I was like, oh, I think I could start one. So I started one, and then just went from there.
And it was always Talkan?
Yeah, it was always Talkan, and I was like trying to figure out a name, right? Because I was
Yeah.
like, hey, I do dividend investing. Should I have a name dividend stuff? Or
Sure.
my tagline is used to be a Canadian's quest for financial independence and joyful life, but I created a new logo recently, like a year and a half ago, and a lot of people were wondering what that Talkan means. So I changed my tagline to a Taiwanese Canadian's quest for financial independence and joyful life.
Yeah.
So, and then the logo, I think it's really clear what Talkan means now.
Okay. Well, the follow-up question I have is, are there very unique things in financial independence or personal finance for a Taiwanese Canadian?
I wouldn't say so, but I think being an immigrant, and obviously Canada's built on immigrants,
Yes,
right?
we're all immigrants.
So
yeah.
they're STEM. I guess I'm technically second generation because I guess my parents are first generation. But some of these struggles we go through, right? Like I didn't learn any English before we moved, so I literally
Really?
my first day
Okay.
in school I wrote about it. I had to post on my struggles with English,
Okay.
and
Perfect.
that was a very interesting experience. And so I definitely could relate to some of these struggles immigrants have, and even if you're born in Canada, you're an immigrant,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
you're a visible minority.
Yeah.
I could relate to those struggles. So I think that's what captured a lot of my readership, because people could relate to me.
Yeah, and even though you had some financial privilege, there
Yeah.
was a lot of other privilege that you did not have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And and I think Canada is so much different than the States.
Yeah.
So that having that Canadian perspective is very important.
Yeah, and then you were able to attract other Taiwanese Canadians or other immigrants who might have gone through the same thing as you, and then can relate. And then we'll listen to what you're saying about dividend investing as well, even though it's not specific to immigrants, but they connect with you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of most of my readers now are just I don't even differentiate between immigrants or not.
Yeah,
It's just Canadian in general that because when people find FIRE, you get a lot of American stories.
It's a lot of American,
and so it's nice for them to be able to relate to, hey, what do we do in Canada? Like, we don't have to care about healthcare because it's universal.
That's not in
right?
our budget.
And then there's like 401k and all that stuff,
right.
which is very different than our RSP and TFSA.
Yeah.
So things like that, I try to explain, and the tax methods and strategies, things like that. So it's nice to hear from Canadians, and I started a series where I interview Canadians who are financially independent or retired early or close to, and I think that gives a better perspective, Canadian perspective, than your typical so and so retire in their 30s in the U.S., right?
Because
So
it's different. It is different. There's a lot of intricacies and nuance in terms of the Canada and U.S. situation. and
exactly.
you can't do everything the same way. And then the very good point is that they always have a line for healthcare in their
Yeah.
budget, and
Yeah.
we don't have to worry about that. But I'm sure we have other things that they don't have, and that's why there has to be a clear divide. So yeah, so it's not just as simple as obviously putting things in GICs and for 40 years or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So you got into dividend investing, which like why is dividend investing good for you?
Well, I started off to be honest, I didn't know about index ETFs back then. But my thought is, hey, I'm using things that produced by these companies I rely on every day. So why
Yeah.
not invest in the company and get paid for it, right?
Sure.
So that was how I started, and we do invest in index ETF. Don't get me wrong. We're kind of doing a hybrid approach where we do dividend and index, kind of capture the both best of both world.
So individual stocks that pay regular dividends,
Yeah.
that are like blue chip stocks that are like
Yeah, so
safe enough,
we could
like
sort of
banks and stuff like
yeah
that.
predict our dividend income, and
Okay,
then
yeah,
index more for the diversification sake. Like
yeah.
a lot of these big international stocks, they're not listed in the U.S., so
No.
there's just no way to buy, like you think of like Samsung, Toyota, some
Yeah.
of these big ones,
Okay,
right?
so it's a way to get diversification
Exactly,
internationally
yeah.
and in different probably industries
Sectors, yeah.
in the sectors, without having to go buy the individual stocks, which is much more difficult. You can easily buy Canadian dividend stocks,
Exactly.
but other ones are a little more difficult to get your hands
and
on.
quite frankly, the Canadian economy is really heavy in financial and energy.
Yeah,
So
those are the
that's
big
another
ones.
way to tap into the other sectors internationally.
Yeah, and you're just buying a little bit of each one when you buy an ETF or an index fund, and so you're very well protected. And
Exactly.
then, like, do you have an idea? Like, are you trying to outdo the market, like with the mix? Are you actively working on this portfolio, or are you just trying to get a certain level of passive average?
Yeah, we're trying to get a
return?
certain level of passive income. Return is obviously important, but I don't track it too closely. Having said that, I recently did wrote a post and just like tally up our returns over the last 5 or 6 years, and we
Okay.
actually have beat the TSX, which is kind of surprising.
So you've exceeded your returns have exceeded the Toronto Stock Exchange.
Yeah, but I mean we own some U.S. stocks too, right? So I then looked at the Dow Jones and then did like a 75-25 mix, and we still came out ahead. Although, and then another reader was, oh, why didn't you compare it to S&P 500, because that's more of a bigger
index.
I was like, oh yeah, I honestly I didn't even think about that. I just did Dow Jones. So
And can you look back and see like what decisions you made that led to you doing better than those indexes?
oh yeah, for sure. I think our epiphany was 2011. Although before then I was buying stuff too, so that was like sort of right after, not right at the bottom of the financial crisis.
Yeah.
But that was kind of when
So
it
you got some things at a discount.
Yeah, and that's when I started moving a lot of my cash into equity. So that's
Okay.
we kind of sort of started building our portfolio on the way up when the market was going up. So that was a big chunk of money there.
Okay.
And then also we I don't know, I think looking back I was pretty smart, but the second one, which I was referring to, was when we were moving the money, the Canadian dollar was over parity. So I
yeah.
changed a lot of Canadian into US.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I automatically now I get like 30% return, right? So that I think that helped with my returns as well.
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff you have in US dollars.
Yeah.
At this point. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So you made a good move at the time.
Yeah, because
there's always a bit of luck in these things.
Yeah,
right?
a little bit lucky. So I wouldn't say I'm like I'm not the next Warren Buffett or anything like that, but
But
just
you took
I made
advantage
some lucky move. But obviously I made some mistakes too, right? Like I definitely have picked stocks where they lost like 20-30%. And
Yeah.
I was like, I need to cut this.
So you're monitoring this. If you buy individual stocks, you have to spend some time monitoring?
I do, but it's kind of interest for me. Like I
Yeah,
enjoy
you like it. Yeah.
analyzing stocks and all that stuff, and I don't know, I just think it's fun.
So the epiphany, what exactly was it that you guys decided to do? Like started to save more, or like I mean, started to like you set a level of savings like of your income?
No, we never set a level. We just if Epiphany was like, hey, we really could, focus on generating passive income in such a way maybe we could be financially independent by our early 40s, and
Yeah.
and see what we want to do. And yeah, we just start doing that, and think next thing lead to another. Here we are.
Well, so did you have to make any big life changes, or was it just a matter of like, we could spend all this because you're both working, I imagine, at the time?
No, my wife is not working.
Okay, so it's just your income.
Yeah, it's just
then.
my income.
And you had started having kids at this point, or?
Our first kid was born in 2013.
Okay, so and you have how many now?
We had 2.
Yeah, 2. So you got 2 kids, a single income, but still able to, like, this dream was not the dream was not cut by the kids coming into play.
No. And I think it helps when we're both naturally frugal.
Yeah.
And we don't have TV at home, and we're
really no TV.
No TV, no cable.
Oh, no Netflix.
No Netflix. Although we borrow my parents.
If you want to watch something specific.
Yeah, we use their login to watch CTV stream or something.
Okay, like on your computer.
Yeah, on the computer. So
so you
probably shouldn't say that.
I mean, I'll edit that out. I probably won't.
It's all good.
You tell me later if it's important. So you're naturally frugal, and then you just have this goal. So that makes you, like, if you were making a decision, should we buy this? Should we not? Like, do we make this? It's easier to make the decision that is easier to get to your goal. If it was like, I want to buy this thing that costs more, costs less. Is that how that kind of happens in your life?
I don't know. I'm never a materialistic person.
Yeah,
so it's like, well, I don't need brand name stuff. I'm just happy of, getting a t-shirt from Superstore, or, I don't, if you know me, I'm not like a fancy guy, and it's like I travel a lot for work, so I've been staying at like these fancy hotels. It's like super nice, but like
that's work.
All I need
that work money. Work pays for that.
Yeah, but like I mean, all I need is just a bed, right? Like as long as it's clean and I could sleep on it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
right? It's just a little bit nice, extra. Like I don't need to like stay at the Ritz. I mean, I don't stay at the Ritz for work, but it's just what you value, right? And by knowing what you value in terms of like, we value experiences and time, and time spent with the family. We're pretty health conscious in terms of eating healthy foods and stuff like that. That has made us less I guess spending money on buying things.
Yeah, well,
random stuff.
Would you say that you figured out early like what you need to make you happy, and so you're not needing to compensate?
Yeah, and it's funny because when we got our place and we were looking to house insurance, and we went to the bank, they're like, oh, your house is worth this, therefore there's usually a home content as part of the house insurance. They're like, oh, so you should have this much content in your house. We're like, holy crap.
Do you remember the number?
I don't remember. It was significant. We're like, we don't have like a quarter of that, if anything.
That's funny, right? Because I remember like as a tenant renting, the standard was like $25,000 in stuff.
Yeah.
And there's no way
as a tenant. We don't even. I don't even know. Like just in my mind, maybe like excluding our car, I don't think if we add everything up, we don't even have. Way less than 20,000.
Right, and the fact that that's the sort of the minimum for someone who's renting a place, let alone buying a whole house and then maybe having a family in there. That just says a lot about what society expects us to have as material possessions.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking of in my mind here, like we don't really have any jewelries. I mean, we got like wedding rings, and they're
usually on our person.
Yeah, and then like I have my camera equipment. They're a few $1,000s here and there.
Yeah.
Our laptops, computer and stuff. But yeah, we don't have anything that's like, we don't have like expensive arts or, our furnitures are all like, I think most of our furnitures are from IKEA, maybe have like a $700 couch, but there's nothing expensive in our house.
Well, it's just,
really.
and you said maybe the car, and I mean, you probably are frugal with your vehicle purchase as well.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Because in the movie last night when they were when she was talking about having to give up her BMW as a status symbol,
yeah,
I couldn't even process. I don't know if you have the same thought. Like, why would a car be a status symbol? Why do you need to have status?
yeah. For me, just 4 wheels for me to get to place A to place B. It doesn't.
Safety.
Having
something
said
that's
that,
safe.
I've test drove the Tesla Model 3, and I'm like, wow, this is a nice car, but I would never spend that much money on a Model 3 or like $50,000 on a car. That's just like or
But
more. That's crazy.
well, the thing about that is that if you had the money, it would be a really good way to spend your money on something that has like that matches with your values. Say
Exactly.
right?
I mean,
And that's the options that you're giving yourself.
exactly. I mean, not saying I would never get a Tesla. Like, I think the electric car is where it's at.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just
still-
can't
it's-
imagine spending
You're
that much
still
money.
balancing.
But some
right?
people see the value. I'm not saying that's wrong.
No.
Like
no.
if you're driving, if you get a Tesla and plan to drive till it dies, I think that's a great investment.
Sure.
Right. The problem with vehicles is that people change their vehicles every 2 or 3 years, and
Yeah.
it's like, and then another thing is they get into these loans that's like 72 months or whatever long, and
know.
it's like your car won't worth that much in like by the time you drive off the lot, right?
So what's your ideal way to buy cars?
Or first car I had was I bought brand new, but I drove it for over 10 years.
Yeah.
So the idea is just drive till it needs to get replaced, kind of thing.
And so like how much did it cost brand new? Do you remember?
I had a Civic, so it was like 20,000.
And so did you have that cash already saved up? Is that how you
Yeah,
you
I
use existing cash, which is
yeah,
hard.
Yeah,
It's hard to do,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
20,000 coming out of your bank accounts.
yeah, yeah.
It's easy to get a car loan and
Yeah,
do
and
the
you're paying
payments.
like $50 or whatever a month or bi-weekly kind
That's
of thing.
it. That's the
Right,
easy way.
Because people think, oh, it's affordable, but they don't think of the actual amount you're paying off on interest and all that
Yes.
stuff, right? So it definitely adds up.
But also, like as you said, people they're locked into this, say 72-month financing or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and doesn't really give you freedom. Like, what if something happens and you can't make the payments for a little bit, right?
Exactly, yeah. It just ties you down a little bit, right? Like, imagine these are like little chains, and you have
Yeah.
like a car loan chain on your ankle, and then you have your mortgage, and then if you have like credit card debt, it's like another chain on your, and it just limits your like financial movement, I guess.
Well, and
So
we
cool.
don't like. It's not like you still can't live your life. You might not even realize that these chains are bringing you down a little bit.
Exactly, and I think we definitely have too much of, like you were saying, status symbol. Like,
Yeah.
one thing I've learned is like, stop caring what others think about me,
Yeah.
and that definitely changed how I see the world. It's like, well,
Absolutely.
I don't care if I'm like, if I'm in t-shirts and jeans, I don't really care if what people think about me in terms of appearance wise, and I feel good about myself.
Yeah. That's
like,
that's the most
who
important.
cares?
Who cares?
Right? Like, who cares if I drive like a beater, or not saying we're driving a beater, but like, who cares? I can still get from point A to point B, and like going to say we just recently went to New York, right? So like, what's the difference if we go into New York, we stay at a cheaper hotel versus somebody that stay at like, I don't know, a penthouse? We still get to see New York.
That's right.
Right?
And the only standards we should have is like safety and
Yeah.
basic comfort.
Yeah.
And I don't need chocolates on my pillows, and I don't need it to be in the middle of Manhattan.
Yeah, and my dad recently, we were joking about, it would be cool to go to a Michelin star restaurant. He's like, well, end of the day, after you eat, you still stuff come out the same way, right? So I'm like, yeah, you get a point. You have
Right,
a
like,
point, but
yeah,
it's
that's
kind
it.
of cool to try these like nicer restaurant too, right? It's an experience on its own, but when you think about it, it's still
it's the
end of the day,
same
it's the same
stuff.
stuff.
And like honestly, it's all just psychological, right?
Yeah.
Because our stomach is just it's still gonna turn it all into mush, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
like no matter how expensive or if it's got gold flakes in it or
Yeah.
what, right? It just probably makes it even worse for you
Yeah.
to have, but apparently it will cost thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
I mean I don't want to take away experiences and as you said, balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to weigh the pros and cons. You double down or quadruple, as Ramit said, of the things that you love to spend money on if
Yeah.
you can afford it, which is the really key thing that he didn't talk about much. Like if you can afford it, well, let's like we were not going to all sell ebooks on our websites, we have to make sure we afford it first before
Yeah.
we even have that conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's a very like with credit card that makes it easier to do that.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
the important thing is to always pay your outstanding credit in full, and that was one of the number one lesson my parents taught me when I got my first credit card. They're like, well, you should treat it as a debit card. So you
yeah.
only spend money.
Yes.
Do you have any bank
Love
on
it.
your credit card? So
Yeah.
I always done that, and I think that's very important because, you know, I look at how much credit I have. It's crazy. Like
Available credit.
yeah, like I think I have one car I have quite a few credit because we got into trouble hacking a little bit.
Which you do some hacking though.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think last time I checked, I had like almost 100,000 in credit.
And available credit.
Just on credit card.
Available credit that
And I'm like, holy crap! Like if I'm not responsible, I could get into a lot of trouble.
that's it, right? And you shouldn't. I currently have 33,000 in available credit. And I went through a gambling addiction and a consumer proposal, right?
Yeah.
If I didn't feel like I was beyond all of that and safe.
Yeah.
That could be super dangerous.
Exactly.
And again, if they get in the wrong hands, or you have a family member who goes rogue,
Yeah.
with your cards. But it's I don't know. Does $100,000 affect your credit utilization negatively? Does it ever get negative? Like you have too much credit?
No,
the answer to that?
I don't know, but I probably have two. I think right now I have 5 credit cards. I should probably close a few.
Yeah, you
kinda
think
thing,
it would
yeah.
help? Not that I.
Well,
we-
my credit score is pretty good. I think I'm over 800.
and we don't need to care so much about our credit scores
Yeah,
unless
yeah.
we're gonna go get credit,
Yeah.
right? It's just for the banks, but
Yeah.
still, it is a measure of like the ways that they have it all set up could indicate that hey, maybe you have too much available
Yeah,
credit
I'm just
already.
like I hear stories like, oh, I really like this. I'll just put it on my credit card. It's no, I got $10,000 on my credit card, and
Oh.
I'll just go buy this, or I'll think about it later.
Oh,
I'll
and
be paying.
for
I just
big
like,
purchases.
please don't do that.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Because like you get your credit card statement, and it's like, if you pay the minimum balance, you'll pay this off in 15 years. I was like, wow, like it's always like,
I've seen one that's like 92 years.
yeah, and people don't think about that, right? It's just like, oh man, like if you do that, you're going to be, and the thing is, people keep racking it up too, right? They just,
Yeah,
yeah, so that just like
it just keeps adding on.
snowballs.
And they don't think about they won't know how it's like we can try to tell them and predict how it's going to turn out, but they won't know personally until they get to a point in the future where wow, I've had debt for like 20 years and
Yeah.
why do I have to keep working? When am I going to be able to retire? Why don't I have any savings? And these are all the
Mhm.
questions that people ask
Yeah.
too late, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but you write all this stuff, we do these podcasts, we write and we talk about this stuff. Hopefully something that one of us says will get through to people.
Yeah, I think
right?
it's too unfortunate that within the school system you don't have any financial education. Well, I think I don't know now, but I think
It's not great.
it's not great. I mean, they should definitely have some sort of financial responsibility courses,
Like
as
full
like
courses.
even in like elementary school or something. Just
Yeah.
teaching about money, right? I mean, we learn about like English, I guess, is important. English, math, and all that stuff. But then,
Okay,
it's like-
geography. Okay, I love geography.
Yeah.
I love knowing about things.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure you can survive without knowing tons about geography. Honestly.
yeah, and like socials or history classes, you're just like remembering dates. It's like, don't get me wrong. I think some of the stuff is important
Yeah.
to learn, but I think you could probably squeeze in
Yeah, is
one
it-
or two personal finance.
Is it
courses,
more important
right?
than understanding like if that you're gonna pay like $5,000 in credit card interest like in 5 years sometimes like
Yeah.
if you to be able to just make that calculation or make those like pro and con like opportunity cost decisions, I think that stuff is so valuable.
Yeah, we're tied into some sort of math classes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you talk about like we saw like I don't know, like Sakatoa and all that stuff, and like you get out of school, how often do you actually use that? I mean, don't get me
Right.
wrong, that's problem solving skills, which I think are extremely important in life, but just you need to have some basic level of personal finance knowledge.
Like practical first,
Yeah.
and then we can talk
Yeah.
about the
like why do you
theoretical
think
stuff.
why do you think a lot of these university students get into debt? Like they go to university and they see like credit card, they sign up, and then they're like, oh, I don't know what to do with credit cards, I'll just buy everything on credit
It's
card.
free money. It's
Yeah,
there
exactly.
to spend.
Yeah, so
And and it's unfortunate that not everyone is as lucky as you to come from a frugal family who talked about money, talked about frugality
Exactly,
and
yeah.
how it's important, gave
Yeah.
you opportunities to be frugal, gave you little nudges, right?
Yeah.
To be like, hey, maybe you should
Yeah.
save that money
Yeah,
instead.
yeah.
Like some parents don't have those skills, and on top of that, a lot of kids won't listen to their parents either, right?
Right, or even it could be as basic, like not even like courses, right? Like I know, in high school there's like usually English class you have to read certain books.
Yes.
Maybe instead of like reading, the classics, you have like one personal finance book,
One book, The Wealthy
right?
Barber.
Discuss about that, right?
Yeah.
Right. It could be as simple as that. Like instead of reading, I don't know, Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's important. I
Of
think that
course.
there's great work, but like maybe instead of like Shakespeare and I don't know.
Tale of Two Cities or something
Yeah,
like that.
Tale
or
of City
whatever.
or The Outsider.
Yeah.
You change one for a personal finance book.
Because you could still apply the English reading and like say
Exactly.
reviews or
Yeah.
essay type thing, but you're also getting knowledge with it. I mean,
Exactly. I think that would be cool.
I think it would be cool too. I think we need to find better ways to just integrate this into everything, because when you get out into life, it's integrated into everything.
Exactly.
Money is in
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
and we can't just go through education blind to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important. But in the meantime, we're gonna keep on writing. We're
Yeah.
gonna keep on talking about it.
Yeah.
So for you, Bob,
Mhm.
talkhand.com.
Yeah.
.ca.com.
.com. So yeah, people could find me on talkcan.com. That's TAWCAN.com. Or on Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter, so that's @talkcan. Again, TAWCAN.
Yeah.
Or if they search my name, Bob Lai,
BOBLAI.
LAI, I think that pops up. My site pops up. Or,
Yeah, I think it
or
does.
my photography website.
I think it
but you could find me.
auto-populates Bob Lai Talkhan.
Oh really?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
that's cool.
Well,
I didn't
maybe
realize
maybe
that.
only mine did that.
I don't know, but yeah,
I've done
I'm
it
pretty
before.
easy to find. But
Yeah.
yeah,
You're one of the options, like Bob Lai, because I'm sure there are many Bob Lais,
no,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but Bob Lai Talkhan, I think, is at the top. So that's the easiest way to find Bob. I'm really glad we were able to do this here in
Yeah,
person.
it's great to connect. Yeah,
Because we're not in the same part of the country, and it's like day 3, and
we're a little bit
We're
tired.
exhausted, and the last thing I want to do is go to a session, or like I don't even know if I could take it in. But
Yeah.
I think it's valuable to have this conversation, and I think we'll be grateful that we did it. Absolutely,
Yeah.
even though we're tired.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Awesome.
thanks again, Bob.
No problem. Good to chat into you.